So as a recruiter, technical tests are the bane of my life, as I think they probably are more for engineers. I just put a post up about this the other day and got some quite conflicting advice as to whether companies should have or shouldn't have technical tests. The majority of people definitely seem to think that they shouldn't. So I found Justin here, and he's going to talk to us all about how he built a perfect process, well, near to as near as you can get, a perfect hiring process. Well, at least one without a technical test that worked pretty well. So, Justin, thank you for coming on. How are you doing?
I'm doing well, thank you. Thank you for having me on the show.
Absolutely no worries at all, and congrats on the new job.
Thank you, Gavin.
For anyone that doesn't know you, like just give me a little bit about your background, kind of where you are now, and how you got there.
Yeah, so I'm currently the head of product engineering for Volta Health, which is a startup that's focusing on simplifying access and information about your healthcare here in the United States. Um, Previous to that, I was the director of software engineering for a company called Strive Health that was focused on treating patients with chronic kidney disease and providing them with better care and better processes. And then previous to that, I was at a company for about 18 years called, started as Exactware. It's now part of Verisk, which is a big enterprise. Worked there as a desktop software engineer, a mobile engineer, online engineer. And after about 14 years, they told me I had to be in charge of people. And so I started studying Agile and Scrum as a way to because I didn't know how to do that. And so that's kind of the path that I took into leadership. While I was there, really learned a lot about hiring, what to do, what not to do, what you're really looking for in engineers to join your team, and how to organize those people into teams that really develop, can really perform well together. And so yeah, that's basically me, longtime code monkey turned engineering leader and still trying to learn and figure that out. But I'm happy to share some of the things that I've learned along the way.
Fantastic. And the process we're mainly going to talk about, that was at your previous. Obviously, you've been at the current company for what, a couple of days, a couple of weeks.
Uh,
So
Week and a half, yeah, something
you probably not completely revamped their entire interview
like that.
process as of yet. So this was at Strive. Is that
Correct.
correct? Yeah,
Yeah.
perfect. So
So yeah, I just I joined Strive actually as a senior software engineer and so an individual contributor, but then grew into that director role. And as part of that, was really involved in kind of crafting the hiring process along with the CTO as well as along a lot of the other early members of the team. And that evolved over time, but I think that it really allowed us to put together some great people, great teams that really gelled together, cared about one another, and were able to deliver lots of good technical features for our patients.
fantastic. So you joined as an engineer. When you joined, was there a technical test for you to join?
No,
There wasn't. So they'd kind of already gone down this route already. So I guess first of all, give me the process from sort of end to end, like from like finding someone initially, like right through to sort of offer.
well, yeah. Let me take you through kind of the evolution of it because it kind of evolved, but it always kept its core uh, kind of core platform or foundation, I guess, the better word for it. So when I joined, it was a small team. I was like the sixth member of the technology team or something like that. And so when we first started, everybody interviewed everybody. The whole group got together and would interview the next engineer to come on, and then we'd all talk about them behind their backs and either give them a thumbs up or a thumbs down based on what we cared. But
Only
we
so
met,
long you can keep that going for in a startup.
yeah, exactly. But that was kind of what we set as our cultural norm was that it's a collaborative process that um, and the team is responsible for the actual hiring. We also set a precedent that we weren't going to do any technical tests, and that was actually the same at Verisk. I think technical tests are largely useless. That's my opinion, because I went to college. I learned C++. Plus plus. I've never written a line of production C++ plus plus code really. Um, you know, the first language I really used was actually an internal language at Exactware. As far as like kind of professionally. And then we moved to C Sharp, which I'd never seen before. had to learn that, right? And so the kind of philosophy I have about technical tests is that I don't want to hire people for what we're doing today. I want to hire people for what they're doing do tomorrow, 6 months from now, and 2 years from now, right? And so what I'm looking for are people that are curious and have a ability to learn and a drive to succeed, that aligns with our cultural values and things like that. And um, so those are the kind of questions that we would ask. We would ask them for examples of our values. So at Strive, our values were caring for others first, tenacity, resilience, fun, innovation. And so we would ask questions about those kinds of things. We would have technical discussions. We would talk about different architectures or maybe different things like that, but never just like you know, write a bubble sort up on the wall, up on the whiteboard, which is, was something I had to do early when I was first interviewing in my career, and but how do you think about technical problems? Because obviously engineering at its heart is problem solving. When we have different tools to do that with, and the tools change and evolve, and we have to change and evolve with them. So we're looking for active learners, people who are curious, who want to learn and can learn. And so those are the kind of things that we were really hiring for. And that's essentially our technical tests there. So the process then evolved. Like you said, you can only have the whole team there for so long. They asked me to take on the director role, so I became kind of the funnel there. It's important to build a really good relationship with your recruiter, whoever's, sourcing your resumes for you. We had an internal and external recruiters. And one thing we talked about actually is we had a previous call was that I think that we screen out a lot of people with recruiters, and I'm not denigrating anybody, but like, because we say like, well, we use Python and we use MySQL and that sort of thing, that the recruiters often try and look at that as a checklist rather than kind of, these are the things that that we should do, we are doing. So if you have experience in those things, great. If not, then hopefully you can learn, and we'll help you learn. But it's important to have that good relationship with your recruiter, so you can say, these things aren't a checklist. These are just kind of informing you about how you want to talk to people. But what's really important to me are these values. Our corporate values, our shared values, and our personal values, whether they're all going to mesh together. And so that's really important. And then they would send me resumes. I would go through those kind of as a top level, seeing any red flags, if they're complaining about, previous companies or things like that, which sometimes they do. I've seen very strange, intros to resumes where they're like throwing other engineers under the bus, and things like that.
On their resume?
Yeah.
Really?
I saw a couple of these, and I think it's because they may have left very toxic environments, or they may have been the toxic element in their environment, and so their intro. I just remember one very specifically that was like, I'm not going to work with teams because this has burned me in the past. I work alone, and this is what I'm going to do. And so for me, those are red flags. If people
and
are jumping down.
And then it says reason for leaving mutual. Like you're like, yeah, sure.
But and then I'm looking, if people are leaving jobs every 6 to 9 months. I'm not saying that's a deal killer, because sometimes they have a reason for it, but maybe that's not a fit for us, because we're looking for long-term teammates that we can build good relationships with. But then I want to make sure that, and I would always take at least 2 passes through the resumes. I know that there's a lot of time there, but I really wanted to double check my own biases, like, making sure that I was giving everybody a fair shake through, the resume process. And then I'd have an initial screening call with them, basically looking for, again, just red flags that were like, I don't need to waste my team's time with some of these, people that maybe, showing a lack of empathy, that show some of those aggressive tendencies. What they, I think it's Camille Fourier calls the brilliant asshole. Like, you just, even though they may be technically brilliant. I mean, I remember interviewing this guy, unbelievable, fantastic Python developer, as far as I could tell. But when he told me his hobbies, he said, I like to date hot chicks. and I'm just like, well, I don't think that that's going to mesh with our values of caring for others first, and the kind of inclusive, and equitable team that we were trying to build. So looking for those just kind of culture red flags. And also, I dive into some technical conversations with them too. Usually I'd maybe present them with a little bit of a problem like that we were facing and just ask them how they would deal with it. There's no right answer, there's no wrong answer because there's a thousand ways to skin a cat, right? There's a thousand ways to solve all these problems. But just to see how they were thinking about and how they, you know, were they thinking about security? Were they thinking about reliability? The things that I think that are important to every engineering organization. And then if that worked out, then at first it was we would have them interview with all of the other engineers. Obviously, as we grew, that became a problem again. And so then I reduced it down to like two panels of 3 to 4 engineers. And they would have those same conversations. And we set the tone, like I said, I think we set the tone each time we interviewed. And each time we had these debriefs about what was important to us, what mattered to us, and they would have technical discussions, but they would also ask, questions like, how do you demonstrate that you care for others, type of thing, or what do you do for fun? Because that fun was one of our, core values. And, just having very casual conversations, trying to remind ourselves that this is a people process, right? Like, this isn't just a number on a spreadsheet or a node on an organizational chart. These are people, and they may not be a fit for us, but they are still people, and we want to be respectful of those conversations and get to know them and ask ourselves, do I really want to work with this person? And then we would come back to a debrief. Usually our recruiter would join us as well. We'd chat about what things we liked, any red flags, any yellow flags, any green flags, things that we really, really appreciated about those people. And then we'd just give them either a thumbs up or a thumbs down. And it had to be unanimous in those cases. You're talking about 6 people or 6 to 8 people that were in that decision-making process. I would facilitate those conversations and try and make sure I was asking good questions of the engineers for their feedback. And then we'd make that decision and either make them an offer or not. But
how did, like,
yeah,
obviously for anyone that's in a position of having this small team that can unanimously make decisions, like how did you like cast your votes? Because like I'm assuming like if you're just like, yeah, I like them, the last person's going to be like, yeah, sure, like I like them as well. Like, so
yeah.
how did you submit them, or like how did that process kind of work?
We used reactions on Teams. We used Microsoft Teams as our video conferencing platform, and so we would just use reactions. And it's kind of like Scrum Poker for the reason that you mentioned. You don't want to have like first mover bias, type of thing. But yeah, we just say 1, 2, 3, and we look for thumbs ups and thumbs downs and tally them up. And then my recruiter would, take it from there.
Were there any that you can remember where either you thought like yourself that you were sure that someone was going to be a yes and someone or like quite a few people were a no?
Yeah, we were actually, one of the important things is, especially for startups, I I cannot stress this enough, in my opinion, that you have to hire slow. But I know that that's really hard in a like high growth startup environment where all of a sudden you got a ton of cash, you got a ton of work to do, and you just want to bring on people. But I think that my team was really disciplined in hiring and making sure that those people. There was one guy I remember. He actually was an expert in one piece of our technology, which was exciting because it was new to most of us.
Yeah.
Um, and we chatted, and I thought he was pretty good in my interview. I went to the panels, and they just brought up some yellow flags, nothing like major, nothing glaring, but we just decided that I think we need to move on to somebody different. And I I had kind of mixed feelings about that because I was like, I thought he was good, but ultimately I'm not going to be the one working with them day to day, right? The other teammates are the ones that are actually going to be having to pair and
Yeah.
and work with them.
For sure. I think you can, like, particularly as a leader, you can get carried away with the fact that like you can see someone can do job for you, like has skill set, can do job that like needs doing, and you can be like, cool. I've heard myself before, and like my co-founders had to stop me being like, whenever someone else has been like, did you? And I'll be like, yeah, but like, yeah, but like just really, I think we should hire him because like, and you almost get these rose tinted glasses because you're like, that person can do the job that we have open, like next,
Yeah.
like you're almost kind of like done with that. Whereas actually getting other people involved that don't see it like that, like you said, they see it as like, this person's a colleague or this person's going to be like my front end engineer to my like the back end work. So like, can they do the things that I need them to do, and like all of that kind of stuff. To see it from like different people's lenses is just so useful.
Yeah, and I think you bring up a good point there, where I think that that's why the technical tests are so pervasive, is that it's not people thinking about growing people and you know long-term investment in people. They want to know, can they do the job now, today? And so the technical test might, you know, if you're doing a lot of Python work and you give a Python technical test, well, you can be sure that they can at least do that job. But can they do the next job that we need to do? And it's going to be written in Go, you know, and now we need a new vector database or something like that where we didn't have that before. Can they learn and adapt to those things? And technical tests won't tell you that. Conversations, I feel, are the best way to ascertain that. You know, find out what they're learning, what they're reading. You know, when they're not sitting in front of the laptop, or what podcast they consume. You know, are they some of those things are nice too because um, they reveal like what their career goals are. Do they want to just be a database administrator, or do they have leadership ambitions? And so
And
yeah.
And do you feel the same about all types of technical tests? Because there's obviously like your kind of hacker ranks and leak codes that can be like quite like language specific. There's your big problems that companies put together and like take home and build this thing for us and all of that. But there's also like I work with companies that have system design interviews and algorithms and things like that, which are much less like language specific. Um, do you think there's any merit in those types of interviews?
I think they're better. But again, still think that you can just have those kind of conversations with somebody. Talk to them about the systems that they've built. Um, I mean, if you are a capable engineering leader who's done systems building before, you'll be able to smell the BS if they're talking about a system they built and they can't describe what the load capacity was on it. They were thinking about what the challenges they had with it. Everybody that's run any kind of system has had some bottleneck, some problem, some flapping piece of code that they've had to address and fix. Talk to them about the problems they faced and how they addressed those. Did they refactor that out into a microservice, or did they have to build redundant load balancers, whatever. I don't know. It doesn't really matter. It's just seeing how they think about things and how they can describe them to you, and also how they communicate those things with you. Because they're going to have to, if you're hiring for like a staff level architect or something like that, they're going to have to be able to communicate that stuff well, to me, and to the rest of the team. So I think that personally, look at their resume. If they've, I always find it funny when I personally get like, I've been requested to take technical tests, and I'm like, I was just at the same place for 18 years. If I wasn't technically at least capable, would I have been able to keep that job for that long? Type of thing. Um, it, it, I just would like to look at their resume, see what interesting systems they've built. Ask them about those systems. Ask them about the challenges. If they say they never had any problems, because they designed a perfect system, then they're a liar, and and you can send them on their way.
Yeah. I guess that's another interesting point. You've personally been looking for yourself for a new role recently. I've seen an increase in the amount of technical tests given to even like engineering leaders. Like, did you have any? Obviously, you don't need to name any names unless it's your current company and you want to sing their praises. But did you have any particularly good or bad experiences from like a candidate point of view recently, either like questions that you asked that you thought were super like insightful and might add to kind of your repertoire like moving forwards, or companies that were just doing things wrong in the way that they were recruiting?
I mean, I was up for a senior engineering manager role, and um, I interviewed, and we had good technical discussion with one of their other engineering managers, and then they asked me to take a technical test, and I'm because I was unemployed, I decided, what the hell? It'll maybe be a little fun project to do. And so I whipped it together. And then they told me that they had moved on, but I never got any feedback on was it the technical decision? Was it did I do something wrong on the technical side of things? Did I do something wrong on the more personal side of things? That's what, in my opinion, one of the lousiest things about the job search process is the complete lack of feedback. You just never know like what I should be working on, type of thing. And so that's something that I took from this recent experience of looking for a position is that if I can, that's something I would like to provide to people. And I think we did that at Strive. Like I would always say, why I was rejecting these resumes and send those back to my recruiter so they could give feedback. And then, I think we also, if we decided in our panel discussion not to hire them, our recruiter then took, the conversation and some of the points back to that person. So I'm hoping that those made it back to potential teammates. But that's to me is really, put a bad taste in my mouth about, that organization. I'm just like, they don't provide any kind of feedback. They ask for a technical test, even at this kind of level. It seemed kind of, I don't know.
I think like
Unpleasant.
from like an engineer that's interviewing for your organization or like anyone, like the interview process like can give you such like kind of little peek into what it's going to be like to work at that organization, right? Like,
Yeah.
and the same as candidates are on their like kind of best behavior, like companies typically like are on their best behavior going through that process as well. So if it takes you a week to get feedback on something during an interview process, like what's it going to be like trying to get something approved like internally or like actually make changes or get stuff done like and you just get a real feel for people. And like you said, like I feel like companies are able to give such a good impression of themselves by just being like good, like because some companies are so bad, like just give them the bare minimum in terms of like here's some feedback, here's an update, like even if it's like, oh sorry, like I know you were supposed to meet with our CTO, he's busy this week, we'll get back to you next week, rather than just being like, oh I don't have the availability so I'm not gonna reach out to them. Like just keeping
Yeah.
people updated like through the process, and obviously using your recruiters to do that and things like that. I think is a really good thing to be doing.
Yeah.
I guess from like outside of the current organization, like any other when designing this sort of like process and taking out the technical test, because I think a lot of people are just so like they need that box ticks to kind of give themselves confidence in hiring someone. Like anything else that people can kind of really do to kind of alleviate that worry.
Well, I mean, going back to your earlier point, about the company, putting on its best face. I think that that's part of why we were able to attract really great engineers at Strive was because our process wasn't process heavy. Um, it was really relationship building in a lot of ways is what we were trying to accomplish. Um, Job interviews can put. I think it's important to keep in mind how much job interviews put people into what they call I'm sure most people know this, but the fixed mindset, where they feel like they're being judged, they're being compared to the job description, they're being compared to other candidates. And so it makes people feel very anxious. It makes them feel very defensive. They feel like they have to defend their resume, defend everything they have ever done. And, so if you design this process to make it people centric, to make it warm and welcoming, and that we are just having a discussion. We're both trying to learn about each other. I feel like that's a big step to alleviating some of that anxiety and really getting to know the people. If you're so focused on their technical skills, well then you can just use the talent management system or whatever to screen out anybody that doesn't have Python in it. But you're going to miss out on a lot of people that may not know Python yet, but they are fantastic database and SQL people, and you can teach them the Python, type of thing. So that to me is it's just considering the fact that we're going to have a long-term investment. We're going to grow these people, and so what they have to be able to do is grow. That's what we're really looking for. And for higher level, positions, yeah, you may need to have a little bit more of the, systems discussion, architecture discussions, um, but having them do some, 3 day long, analysis and system architecture design, and for free, and bring it back to you. That's not putting people first. Um,
Especially when it comes down to, oh, this wasn't quite what we were looking for, like, and that's
right.
it. Like, do you know what I mean?
Yeah. And then, don't be afraid of junior engineers. Um, people, one of the things, our head of product thought we were crazy at Strive, but some of our earliest hires were very junior engineers, came right out of boot camp, didn't know Python, didn't know anything about uh, AWS and cloud engineering or anything like that. And those individuals were among our best people from a
Right.
cultural perspective, as well as they ended up being very technically savvy and capable. And I think that it helped knit our team together because we were teaching so many people on the team, and they were hungry to learn and learned quickly and started, delivering and you know really quickly. Um, and so as long as you have that growth culture, that culture of growth, that culture of learning built in, then hiring, people that need a chance, that fit your culture really well, that can, are people. There's one of these people, I always called them the conscience of our team, because they always made sure that we lived our values and that we were being fair. And if they saw any kind of unfairness or biases or something like that, they would call that out. And that really helped reinforce that great culture that then helped us all do better and helped us all perform. I mean, I I am so proud of that team. I mean, we were delivering hundreds of times every sprint, to our production. And, part of that was that we just had this culture of supporting each other, teaching each other, and everybody learned our way of doing things, and it really, worked well, rather than, just hiring people that fit a particular mold.
Sure. Interesting you said about juniors. Like, it's one of the first times that I've heard a startup hiring juniors sort of so early on, because obviously everyone has this mentality of they're gonna kind of take you half a person backwards, in terms of training them. But obviously there's the long term benefits of get a lot more out of juniors in terms of like typically longevity, loyalty, like all of that kind of stuff, because you've taken that chance on them. Um, did you change your process at all when looking at the juniors? Because obviously you can't have these high level technical discussions about all of the previous work that they've done for junior engineers. So did you change this process at all?
Nope, not at all. In fact, and like I said, they were some of our early hires. Like when I wasn't actually in charge of that process. But we brought them in, and we had those conversations. We would have technical discussions, like basically, like, because they come from a boot camp, like a coding boot camp, and I'd not had a lot of success at Exactware with those kinds of hires. But here, I think it was because the culture was that of investment and growth. And so we would have conversations about, like, their capstone project. Tell us how it worked. Walk us through it. Why did you do what you did? Type of conversations, and just seeing that they could explain that they understood the why of what they were doing. I mean, I'm sure that they don't know down to the design pattern algorithm, type of level, that, but they were willing to communicate with us, and walk us through those projects. And so we could still tell that these were engineers, these were problem solvers. And, when when we found that they were also a cultural fit for us, then we knew that we wanted to invest in those people. And so bring them on and start putting them to work. And it worked out really well for us. I mean, one of one of them has moved on to another company at this point, but is doing really great work for them. And another, we've actually promoted up through senior engineer at this point, because they're doing so well. So it's if you have that culture of growth that you've built in, I think you can get a lot of value out of, this. There's you asked me about book recommendations, and I'll get to those, but there's one by Adam Grant called Hidden Potential, um, that talks about this kind of thing. Is like there's these people that don't fit your mold of what you really think that you need and stuff like that. But if you look deeper, you can see that these people, that they have that capacity for learning, they have that capacity for growth, they have that capacity for resiliency, which is so important when you're dealing in technology with, wicked problems, strange tools, evolving tools, all those things. Those are the kind of traits that I think that great engineers have in spades.
For sure. And I guess we'll obviously go on to your recommendations as well, but one of the obviously issues that a lot of companies are facing at the moment is just the pure volume of applications that they're getting through for roles, particularly for a leadership level. For like in some particular locations, there's a lot of good engineers out of work, and as layoffs kind of continue to happen, particularly if companies are hiring remotely, as well as the implementation of all of these like auto apply tools and things like that coming in, like recruiters and like in some cases in smaller organizations, CTOs of companies are getting bombarded with like hundreds of applications. Like when you're not hiring for specific keywords, and when you're hiring for culture fit and stuff like that, and you've got hundreds of applications to go through, like how are you doing that? Like what are your kind of thoughts about how people can kind of solve that problem, short of going and having a 15-20 minute conversation with all 350 people that have applied to your job ad, which would be lovely to do, but no one has time for. Like how can companies solve this problem?
Right. Um, that's I don't have a particularly great answer for that particular problem. Um, you know, in some ways, for me, going through resumes, it was a lot of, I don't know how my recruiter did it. Honestly, I don't. Which ones they decided to send to me eventually, but I would get like, you know, 20 to 30 resumes per week that I was, going through. I mentioned I went through them twice because I wanted, and so for those, in a lot of ways, I'm using my gut, right? Like, for to the learning part, I tend to try and look like, have they used a variety of languages in their career? If they're like for a senior engineer or something, lead engineer, looking for a variety of technologies, tools, languages, because that to me says, okay, they had a new problem they had to solve, so they learned something new. So those are kind of things I'm looking for, which I don't know how you do that in an applicant tracking system or whatever, but that's kind of one thing that I would look for. Um, when I'm looking for, if you're looking at junior engineers, I'm looking for people that have broad experience. So if they have they, done some service project type things that are, that is of interest to them, that might tell me a little bit about what kind of culture they want to work in, what their values are. Um, and then, as far as like college and things like that, like did they move around colleges? That sometimes is actually a good thing because it shows that they're willing to adapt and that. Do they have longevity at certain places? Like, I'm not saying that's not always a red flag, because if you're just jumping because either you're really good and you keep getting recruited away, or because you're leaving toxic environments.
Yeah.
And what I remember, I learned something actually at Agile 2023. I talked to a woman there, who gave a presentation on imposter syndrome, and she talked about the biases. And she was a woman of color, and she was talking about the biases that and microaggressions that cause people of color to jump jobs because they've experienced all these microaggressions, and so then they don't get promotions and things like that. So being aware of that and looking, um, you know, making sure that you're not just discarding them just because of job jumping and stuff like that. But yeah, I don't have a magic silver bullet answer to that problem.
Well,
What
it
I can say
sounded
is
it
that
sounded like you said just use a good recruiter, which is very good for me. But
there you go. I mean, in all honesty, you need to build that relationship, and then making sure that you're crafting your job descriptions in a way that, I mean, and I'll be honest, I did this too. It's not like I read every job description, you know, really in depth any more than the person I send my resume to is going to read my resume really in depth. But you can kind of craft your job descriptions. Some of the best ones I've seen don't mention a lot of technical stuff and technical skills. They do talk about the company. They talk about the teams themselves, what their team's values are, what they're prioritizing. Are they prioritizing, security or, scalability, data? What are they, and crafting that in a way that maybe will scare off people that are just looking to just do Python and MySQL. That's, or if that's their stack of choice, then great. But we're not stack fundamentalists, so maybe this isn't a good fit for you. Um, Crafting a good job description, I feel like, can allure in those people that um, maybe you wouldn't necessarily see. I don't know, but that's something I'll be experimenting with. That my next role is
Yeah,
some of these challenges.
for sure. And I wonder if there is, like, I'm sure there's tools out there already, but I wonder if there is like a good way of, because a lot of companies use these small technical tests as like an initial filter. They're like, particularly for like junior roles, they'll literally ping it out to like 100 people, be like, complete this. Half of them won't even bother. Like a quarter will fail, and then they're left with like 50 people that have completed this thing, and then they're like, right, now we'll go through all of our cultural stuff. So some of them just use it as like a first filter. I wonder if there is a way of having this almost like personality and like goal orientated filter, and like maybe it is even having on your thing, like if you feel like this particularly aligns with you, like write us a cover letter with your application, or like write like a few sentences about why, like, do you know what I mean, and just having those people almost filtered to the top. So if you do have people that are like, this culture that you're talking about is me, here's why, like just giving people the opportunity to be that, whether it's through the recruiter or whether seeing your advert and being able to just add like a few notes of like, oh, this is great for me because like did all of
Yep.
these things. Because at the end of the day, like they're not being hired because they're great at writing a resume, like, and some of them are notoriously bad at writing resumes.
Right.
A lot of them don't even have them. They just use their LinkedIn, which just has a list of software engineer, software engineer, software engineer, and maybe a few technical skills in there. So you're not
Yeah.
really getting a sense of the person, and it's hard to really get that personality out of that. So I feel like if there is a way of like allowing people to add, just, I'm not talking about War and Peace style cover
Yeah.
letters, but just a few sentences of like, this resonated with me from your job description. I
Yeah.
feel like that would be a real green flag for you guys to get like
Yeah.
a resume with a, oh, like I tick these boxes.
Well, and there are some of those. I don't know which tools they were, but I mean, I've gone through, during my job search with those, and I do think that that is a good way to do it. Us now sitting on the other side of the desk, the problem for me is that there you still, it's kind of like your cover letter. You can write it, you can take all the time you want to craft that letter, but you still don't know if anybody's reading it or if it's providing any value. And that was the same thing. Like there were some jobs where that would just instantly scare me off because I'm just like, I don't actually care about this job that as much as enough time to take that time. Others, though, I was like, I feel like I fit this really well. This sounds exciting, and I would spend a lot of time crafting the answers to those questions, and then I never received any feedback. So again, I don't know. Did anybody even read those? Did it have any effect? And so that's, I think, is a really kind of demoralizing part of that, the whole process, is that that could be a good idea, and for me that would be something good, and I would want to read those and get a sense of that person in addition to their resume. But it's such a big black box, and you don't know how many people are sitting behind it,
Yeah,
and what value you're providing with spending the time to really think about and craft um,
you
that kind
kind
of
of
letter.
would almost need to commit to like saying, like putting your neck on the line and being like, we will review every single like submission that
Yeah.
has included these things, and then just make sure that you do it. Because I think, like you said, so many people that like start the job search, they'll send in a few and then hear nothing, and then they're just like, right, I guess I'll just hit apply to anything and everything, and then their applications get worse and they apply to more, and like it creates a lot of this problem. So
Yeah.
I think, like you said, there's definitely ways of doing it, but again, like I think if you are going to have that as an option, it's the same as people who send out technical tests. Like if you're going to do it, you have to be reviewing, like, and I think it is a great option. That's almost like part of your technical test. If you don't have a technical test and you're giving this option to be like, say why you're a good fit to our very, very good job description, not just,
Mhm.
I have experience with Ruby on Rails, please hire me. Like if you're talking about this fun and like growth oriented mindset and like ability to pick up new skills and stuff like that, and you're giving someone the option to be like, here's where I've done all of those things. Like that should be a great thing, and you should be like able to review those, right? But I guess that comes down to you and working with your recruiter to make sure that they're able to review them for you and all that kind of stuff. So yeah, I think that problem's going to be around for a while. So like any of the other tools that you look at as you kind of go through your next round of hiring, please do obviously let me know.
Yeah.
And yeah, I guess just finally coming on to I guess where you get, apart from obviously listening to this podcast, which you've told me that you
Of
don't
course.
even do,
I read the Substack.
like where do you get sort of like your inspiration for both kind of like how you hire and more importantly how you kind of lead your team?
Yeah. So, I mean, first thing, I think what we, when you ask about like tools or whatever else, I'm a big fan of Agile and that. And so, one of the Agile principles is individuals and interactions over processes and tools. And so I think by keeping in mind and leaning towards the left side of that equation and remembering that you are dealing with people behind every resume is a person. Um, I'm not saying that that's going to fix everything. There's still going to be problems, but I think that if when we're thinking about these processes and tools, we make sure that they are serving the individuals and interactions that we want to have, I think that that'll lead us to a better place and a better process. Um, but so I read a great deal. My during my job search time, I don't know, there's must be like 15 books or something like that I went through. But one that I just reread because I'm joining a small startup and we're going to be scaling. It's called Scaling Up Excellence by Robert Sutton and Huggy Rao. They're organizational psychologists from Stanford. Excellent book. Their other book, The Friction Project, is also really good for how to put friction and guardrails in where they need to be and removing them where they don't. Um, and then, as I mentioned, Hidden Potential by Adam Grant is a great one for thinking about how do I find the hidden potential in people? How do I find these like diamonds in the rough or these people that maybe they're not the best programmer today, but by damned, if I just provide them right with the right scaffolding and support, they will be. Um, and so those are two that I really like. Culture Code by Daniel Coyle is another one that I read when I first took on the director position because our CTO at Strive really instilled in me. He said, culture is number one. Everything else follows from that. And so I read that one to, try and figure out how to make sure that we're building, great cultures that are supportive and create that, those cultures of growth, which is another one. Cultures of Growth by Mary C. Murphy is an excellent one for leaders that want to build a culture that, really encourages people to grow and learn.
Amazing. I think so. I'll make sure that all of those are tagged up and in the Substack for anyone listening. And Justin, if anyone's got any follow-up questions, for example, if they love technical tests and want to tell you how great they are, or just want to say hello, like where's the best place to kind of get hold of you? Is it LinkedIn or?
Yeah, LinkedIn is a great one. And you can also email me justin@volta.health.com. Happy to take calls there. Please do not send me sales spam. I get enough of that already. But if you actually want to talk about these things, because maybe you're right, maybe I am wrong about the technical tests. And if somebody can teach me, a better way to do that in a way that is not demeaning and to the candidates, that makes the candidates feel good about themselves, and that lets us see the value that they may bring to our team, then I'm happy to learn that. But that's just not been my experience, and I think I put together a few really great teams and hired some fantastic people without a technical test and still had people delivering on technical excellence.
Amazing. But thank you so much, Justin. Really appreciate your time. Lovely to chat with you.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate it.
Thanks, man. Speak to you soon. Bye.
Cheers.